Before you answer, I want you to imagine something. Imagine that, for just one day, someone could read every thought that crossed your mind. Not your social media posts. Not the smile you show in photographs. Not the polite answers you give when someone asks, "How are you?" Your real thoughts. The ones you never say out loud. Would they believe you're happy? Or would they quietly realize you've been pretending for much longer than you ever admitted, even to yourself? Now imagine you're sitting across from someone who has known you for years. Someone who remembers the version of you that laughed over the smallest things. The version of you who could spend hours talking about dreams instead of deadlines. The version of you who believed the future was full of possibilities. They look at you for a long moment. Not because they're judging you, but because they notice something everyone else has missed. Your smile doesn't reach your eyes anymore. There's nothing dramatic about it. Nothing anyone would point out. But the people who truly know us always notice the little things. They notice when our laugh sounds different. They notice when our excitement slowly disappears. They notice when we keep saying, "I'm just tired," even though the tiredness never seems to end. After a few moments of silence, they ask you one question. A question so simple, yet so uncomfortable, that your mind immediately starts searching for an answer. How long has it been since you were truly happy? Not entertained. Not distracted. Not relieved that a difficult week was finally over. Truly. Deeply. Genuinely happy. You open your mouth to answer. But nothing comes out. Because maybe you don't remember anymore. The room stays quiet. Your friend doesn't say another word. They don't try to answer the question for you. They simply wait. Because some questions aren't meant to be answered quickly. They're meant to be felt. You look down at the table. You try to remember. Maybe it was your last vacation. No. Even then you spent most of the time checking emails and replying to messages. Maybe it was your birthday. But if you're honest, you were more worried about whether everyone else was enjoying themselves than whether you were. Maybe it was when you finally achieved that goal you've been chasing for years. The promotion. The new job. The new house. The new phone. The dream you once believed would change everything. For a few days, it felt incredible. But then something strange happened. Life quietly returned to normal. The excitement faded. The routine came back. And another goal appeared on the horizon. It's almost as if happiness kept moving one step further away. Just when you thought you'd finally catch it. Does that sound familiar? If it does, you're far from alone. Many people spend years believing that happiness is waiting somewhere in the future. I'll be happy when I earn more. I'll be happy when I have more free time. I'll be happy when everything finally works out. But the future has an interesting habit. Every time we reach it, it becomes the present. And then our minds immediately begin chasing another tomorrow. Without realizing it, we postpone our happiness again. Your friend notices you've gone quiet. Then they smile. Not because they have all the answers, but because they've asked themselves the same question before. They lean forward and say, "Can I tell you something? When we were younger, we thought happiness came from getting more. More money. More success. More recognition. More achievements. But somewhere along the way, I realized something. Some of the happiest moments of my life cost absolutely nothing. That sentence stays with you. Because suddenly, memories begin returning. Running outside until sunset without caring what time it was. Laughing with friends over jokes that weren't even funny. Family dinners where nobody looked at a screen. Long conversations that somehow made the hours disappear. Listening to the rain against your window. Watching the stars on a quiet night. Holding someone's hand without saying a word. None of those moments made headlines. None of them changed the world. But somehow, they changed you. It's strange, isn't it? When people remember the happiest days of their lives, they rarely talk about expensive things. They remember people, places, conversations, moments, feelings. Maybe happiness was never hiding in extraordinary experiences. Maybe it had been quietly living inside ordinary ones all along. The problem is, ordinary moments are easy to overlook while they're happening. We tell ourselves they're just another day. Just another dinner. Just another walk. Just another conversation. Only years later do we realize. Those ordinary days became the memories we would give anything to experience one more time. Your friend gently taps the table. There's another question I want you to think about. When was the last time you were completely present? Not halfway listening while checking notifications. Not thinking about tomorrow during today's conversation. Not worrying about work while spending time with family. Completely. Fully. Present. For most of us, those moments have become surprisingly rare. Our attention is constantly pulled in 100 different directions. One notification. Another headline. Another message. Another video. Another thing demanding our focus. Without noticing, we become experts at being everywhere. Except where we actually are. And maybe that's one reason happiness sometimes feels so distant. Because happiness has always existed in the present moment. Not yesterday. Not next year. Right here. Right now. Your friend looks out the window for a second. Then quietly says, maybe you've never forgotten how to be happy. Maybe you've just forgotten where happiness usually begins. And for the first time since this conversation started, you stop trying to find the perfect answer. Instead, you simply sit there, thinking about a question you never expected would change the way you look at your own life. A gentle breeze moves through the air. Neither of you says anything for a while. Strangely, the silence doesn't feel awkward. It feels honest. Your friend finally breaks it. Do you know what I think is the biggest misunderstanding about happiness? You shake your head. Most people think happiness is something you find once, and keep forever. But it isn't. It's something you practice. Those words stay with you. Because when you think about it, every important part of life works the same way. You don't become healthy by exercising once. You don't build a friendship with a single conversation. You don't become confident overnight. They all require small choices. Repeated over time. Maybe happiness does too. Your friend points toward the people walking outside. Some are laughing. Some look exhausted after work. Some are talking on the phone. Others are walking alone. At first glance, everyone seems fine. But appearances rarely tell the whole story. The happiest looking person in the room may be carrying invisible worries. The quietest person may have the kindest heart. The person who seems to have everything may still feel something is missing. That's why comparing your life to someone else's highlight reel is so dangerous. You're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's best moments. And that's never a fair comparison. Your friend smiles again. Can I ask you another question? When was the last time you celebrated something small? You think for a moment. Nothing comes to mind. And maybe that's the problem. Somewhere along the way, we stopped celebrating progress. We only celebrate perfection. We tell ourselves, I'll be proud of myself after I reach the next milestone. After I lose the weight. After I get the promotion. After I buy the house. After life finally slows down. But life doesn't always slow down. It simply keeps moving. And if we keep postponing joy until everything is perfect, we may spend years waiting for a moment that never arrives. Your friend leans back and quietly says, "Do you remember being a child?" Of course you do. Back then, a rainy afternoon could become an adventure. A cardboard box could become a spaceship. A family dinner could become the best part of the day. Nothing was extraordinary. Yet somehow, everything felt meaningful. What changed? Was the world different? Or did the way we looked at it change? As adults, we become experts at noticing problems. Deadlines. Bills. Responsibilities. Mistakes. Things we haven't achieved yet. But we slowly lose the habit of noticing simple moments worth appreciating. A cool breeze after a hot day. A stranger's unexpected kindness. A conversation that makes you smile. A quiet morning before the world wakes up. These moments don't ask for attention. That's why they're so easy to miss. Your friend looks at you and says, maybe happiness hasn't been avoiding you. Maybe it's been waiting patiently in places you've stopped looking. That idea changes something. Because instead of asking, why am I not happy? You begin asking, what have I stopped noticing? And sometimes, the second question is far more powerful than the first. The cafe is beginning to empty. People pay their bills. Chairs scrape across the floor. Outside, the sky has turned dark. Hours have passed without either of you realizing it. Before leaving, your friend says one last thing. I'm not asking you to change your entire life tomorrow. I'm asking you to notice today's life before it becomes yesterday's memory. Those words follow you all the way home. And as you unlock your door, you realize something. Maybe this conversation was never about finding happiness. Maybe it was about remembering the moments that quietly create it. That night, you couldn't fall asleep. Not because something bad had happened, but because one simple question refused to leave your mind. How long has it been since you were truly happy? You stared at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. The more you thought about it, the more you realized something surprising. You could remember the stressful days with incredible detail. You remembered deadlines, arguments, mistakes, moments when things didn't go as planned. But when you tried to remember your happiest moments, you had to think much harder. Why? Because our minds naturally hold on to problems more tightly than peaceful moments. It's almost like the brain believes every challenge deserves to be remembered. while every beautiful moment can simply pass by unnoticed. Maybe that's why gratitude isn't about pretending life is perfect. It's about teaching your mind to notice what it normally overlooks. The next morning, before reaching for your phone, you remembered your friend's question. Instead of immediately checking messages, you looked outside your window. The world hadn't changed overnight. Cars were still passing. People were still rushing to work. The sky looked ordinary. But for the first time in a long while, you actually noticed it. Not because it was extraordinary, but because you had finally slowed down enough to see it. Later that day, you passed an elderly man sitting alone on a park bench. He wasn't looking at a screen. He wasn't in a hurry. He was simply watching children play nearby. They were laughing, running, making up games with nothing more than a ball and their imagination. The older man smiled. Not because he was part of the game, but because he appreciated the moment. It made you wonder. How often do we witness beautiful moments without truly experiencing them? How many sunsets have we ignored because we were too busy looking down? How many conversations have we only half heard because our minds were somewhere else? How many memories have quietly slipped away, simply because we never paused long enough to live them? That evening, you decided to do something different. Nothing dramatic. No grand life plan. No impossible promises. You simply called someone you hadn't spoken to in months. The conversation lasted only 15 minutes. You laughed about old memories, shared updates about life. And when the call ended, something felt different. Not because every problem had disappeared, but because, for those 15 minutes, you felt connected. Sometimes happiness doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives through a familiar voice, a meaningful conversation, a quiet walk, or a moment when you realize you're exactly where you need to be. As the days passed, you began noticing something else. The happiest people you met weren't necessarily the ones with the easiest lives. Some had demanding jobs. Some faced uncertainty. Some carried responsibilities you couldn't even imagine. Yet they still found reasons to smile. Not because they ignored life's difficulties, but because they refused to let those difficulties become the only thing they noticed. That's an important difference. Optimism isn't pretending everything is perfect. It's believing that difficult moments don't tell the entire story. Your friend never claimed life would always be easy. They simply reminded you that joy and hardship can exist at the same time. A difficult week can still include a meaningful conversation. A stressful day can still end with gratitude. A challenging season can still contain moments worth remembering. And perhaps that's the lesson hidden inside their question. Maybe true happiness isn't a destination waiting somewhere in the future. Maybe it's a collection of ordinary moments that become extraordinary when we give them our full attention. Before we continue, I want you to ask yourself the same question one more time. Not to judge yourself. Not to compare your life with anyone else's. Just to be honest. How long has it been since you felt truly happy? And more importantly, what's one small thing you could do today that might help you feel a little more alive tomorrow? Because sometimes The biggest changes in our lives don't begin with giant steps. They begin with one honest question and one small decision. As you thought about that question, another realization quietly surfaced. Maybe the reason happiness feels so difficult to find is because we've been looking for it in the wrong places. Think about it. How many times have you told yourself, once this happens, then I'll finally be happy. Once I finish school. Once I get that job. Once I earn more money. Once I move to a better place. Once I find the right person. Once life becomes easier. There's nothing wrong with having goals. Goals give us direction. They push us to grow. They inspire us to become better. But there's a hidden danger. When happiness is always attached to the next milestone. Because every milestone eventually becomes your new normal. The dream job becomes just work. The new car becomes just a car. The bigger house becomes just home. Human beings are incredibly adaptable. It's one of our greatest strengths. But sometimes, it's also the reason we stop appreciating what we already have. Your friend understood this. That's why they never asked, "Why aren't you successful?" They never asked, "How much money do you make?" Or, "How many goals have you achieved?" They asked something much simpler. Something much more important. Are you actually enjoying the life you're working so hard to build? That question changes everything. Because it's possible to build a life that looks impressive from the outside, while feeling completely disconnected on the inside. You can be productive without feeling fulfilled. Busy without feeling present. Successful without feeling peaceful. And recognizing that isn't failure. It's awareness. Awareness is often the first step toward meaningful change. A few days later, you found yourself walking through a park just before sunset. Children were chasing each other across the grass. Parents were talking on nearby benches. Someone was teaching their little daughter how to ride a bicycle. She fell. Got back up. Tried again. Fell once more. Then finally, she found her balance. For a few seconds, she rode forward on her own. The smile on her face wasn't because she'd become perfect. It was because she'd made progress. Watching that moment, you couldn't help but smile too. It reminded you of something easy to forget. Life has never expected perfection from us. Only progress. Maybe we've been making happiness harder than it needs to be. Maybe happiness isn't found by waiting for life to become perfect. Maybe it grows each time we choose to appreciate what today already offers. Before your friend left that evening, they said one final sentence that stayed with you long after the conversation ended. One day, you'll look back on your life and realize that these ordinary days were the days you were living. Not preparing to live. Not waiting to live. Actually living. And that's when you understood the real purpose of their question. They weren't trying to measure how long you'd gone without happiness. They were trying to remind you that happiness isn't something life hands to us. It's something we notice, protect, and make time for. So before this conversation ends, take one last moment. Not to think about yesterday. Not to worry about tomorrow. Just this moment. Right here. Right now. Ask yourself honestly. If a close friend sat across from me today, and asked, "How long has it been since you were truly happy?" what would my answer be? Whatever that answer is. Don't let it become the end of the story. Let it become the beginning of a new one. Because sometimes, a better life doesn't begin with a huge opportunity. It begins with one honest conversation. One small change. And one decision to stop rushing through life long enough to truly live it. Just before your friend stands up to leave, they stop, turn back toward you, and ask one final question. Not because they expect an answer, but because they know. This is the question that changes everything. They look you in the eyes and say, "If nothing about your life changed over the next 5 years, if every day looked almost exactly like today, would you honestly be happy?" Silence. No excuses. No quick replies. Just silence. Because suddenly, it isn't about yesterday anymore. It isn't even about today. It's about your future. You realize something that most people never do. The life you're living right now is quietly becoming the life you'll remember tomorrow. Every ordinary morning. Every rushed meal. Every phone call you postponed. Every sunset you ignored. Every person you meant to spend more time with. They're all becoming memories. Whether you notice them or not. Your friend smiles. Not because they have the perfect life, but because they hope you'll start paying attention to yours. Before walking away, they say one last sentence. Don't spend your whole life waiting for a happier chapter, while skipping the pages you're living right now. You watch them disappear into the crowd. And for the first time in a very long time, you don't reach for your phone. You don't think about work. You don't worry about tomorrow. You simply stand there, looking at the world around you. The cool evening air. The sound of people talking. The laughter of children in the distance. The colors fading from the sky. Nothing extraordinary had happened. The world hadn't changed. But something inside you had. Because you finally understood. Happiness isn't a place you'll arrive at someday. It's a choice to notice the life that's already happening around you, before it becomes a memory. So now, let me ask you the same question your friend asked. How long has it been since you were truly happy? Don't answer me. Answer yourself. Because that answer might be the beginning of everything that comes next.